The axe bit deep into frozen wood, splitting it clean down the middle. Garrett Hale had been at this for 2 hours, working through the pile of logs that would keep his cabin warm through the next blizzard. Sweat froze on his beard despite the heavy work. Bjornheim never got warm, not even in summer. That was why he picked it. He bent to gather the split wood when something made him stop. The forest had gone quiet. No wind through the pines. No small animals rustling in the undergrowth. Just silence, heavy and wrong. Garrett straightened slowly, his hand moving to the rifle he kept propped against the woodpile. 15 years of living alone had taught him to trust his instincts. Something was out there. Then he saw the marks in the snow. 4 parallel gouges, each as wide as his hand, carved deep through the icy crust. They led from the tree line straight to his front porch. Whatever made them was big, really big. Garrett picked up his rifle and followed the trail. His boots crunched in the snow, loud in the unnatural quiet. The gouges were spaced far apart, like something had been dragging itself forward with massive effort. Dark spots dotted the white snow between them. Blood, already freezing solid. He came around the side of his cabin and stopped. 3 creatures lay collapsed across his porch. Dragons, juvenile frost dragons, their scales white and silver like the snow around them. One was maybe 12 feet long, the other 2 slightly smaller. Their wings were torn, membranes shredded into ribbons. Burns marked their hide in regular patterns. Weapon fire. Military grade from the look of it. The smallest one, silver-scaled, and delicate, raised her head weakly as Garrett approached. Her eyes were golden, bright against the blood matting her scales. She looked at him with an expression he had seen before, on wounded soldiers in field hospitals. Pain, fear, and something else. Awareness. Garrett's hands tightened on the rifle. He should call this in. There were still bounties on dragons in the outer colonies, legal salvage rights on dead ones. He could make enough credits to live comfortably for years. But those eyes kept watching him, waiting to see what he would decide. He lowered the rifle. "All right," he muttered, more to himself than to them. All right. His storage barn was bigger than the cabin, built to hold supplies for the long winters. Garrett dragged the first dragon inside, trying not to think about how the creature whimpered when he grabbed her torn wing. The other 2 were unconscious, which made moving them easier but also more worrying. By the time he had all 3 inside and the barn door closed, his arms burned and his back screamed in protest. He was 47, too old for this kind of work. But he kept moving, gathering supplies from his medical kit, heating water on the portable stove. The wounds were bad, precision cuts from laser rifles, burns from neural disruptors. Someone had hunted these dragons with professional equipment. Someone who wanted them alive or freshly dead. Garrett cleaned the worst of the burns on the silver female first. She watched him work, never making a sound even when it had to hurt. The other 2, both male from their heavier build and ridge patterns, remained unconscious. Their breathing was shallow but steady. As he worked, memories kept surfacing. Memories he had spent 15 years trying to bury, his hands, younger and steadier, holding the same kind of rifle that had wounded these creatures, the weight of metals on his dress uniform. Speeches about protecting humanity from dangerous predators. The day they gave him the Silver Star for killing more dragons than any other soldier in his unit. The day he found the journals. Garrett's hands shook as he stitched a tear in the silver dragon's wing membrane. She noticed, her golden eyes tracking the tremor. He wondered if she knew. If dragons had stories about the human hunters who came during the culling wars, he wondered if they had stories about him specifically. "I'm sorry," he whispered, not sure if he was apologizing to her or to all the others, the ones who hadn't made it to anyone's porch, the ones he had personally made sure would never fly again. The dragon blinked slowly, a gesture that looked almost like understanding. Garrett worked through the night. He set the larger male's broken foreleg, wrapped the middle one's cracked ribs, applied burn gel to 100 different wounds. He gave them water mixed with electrolytes, forcing it between their jaws with a tube. Basic field medicine, the kind he had learned in boot camp a lifetime ago. Dawn was breaking when he finally sat back against the barn wall, exhausted. The 3 dragons were stable. Not healthy. Not by a long shot. But no longer dying. The silver female was still awake, still watching him with those 2 intelligent eyes. Garrett met her gaze and saw himself reflected back. A tired old man covered in blood, surrounded by the same creatures he had once been decorated for killing. "I don't know why you came here," he said quietly. "But whoever's hunting you, they'll come looking. These wounds are fresh, a day old, maybe 2. They'll have tracking equipment. They'll follow your trail." The dragon's eyes didn't leave his face. Garrett had the strangest feeling she understood every word. "I can't protect you for long, I'm just one person. But I can give you time to heal, time to figure out where to go next." He paused, then added something he hadn't planned to say. "I owe you that much. I owe all of you that much." The silver dragon lowered her head slowly, coming to rest on the barn floor. Her eyes finally closed. Garrett stayed where he was, listening to the sound of 3 dragons breathing in the darkness of his barn. Outside, wind picked up, howling across the frozen landscape. Snow began to fall again, covering the blood trail that led to his door. For the first time in 15 years, Garrett Hale was no longer alone with his guilt. 3 days had passed since Garrett found the dragons on his porch. 3 days of changing bandages, forcing medicine down unconscious throats, and watching the sky for ships that might be coming to finish what someone else started. The silver dragon woke first, on the 2nd day. Then the middle male, who watched Garrett with cautious eyes but accepted food and water without resistance. The largest male remained unconscious, his breathing heavy and labored. Garrett worried about internal injuries he couldn't treat. On the morning of the 4th day, everything changed. Garrett was mixing antibiotic powder into water when he heard it. A voice, quiet and rasping, speaking words he could understand. "Thank you." He spun around. The silver dragon was sitting up, her long neck curved so she could look at him directly. Her golden eyes were clear now, alert and focused. "You can talk," Garrett said stupidly. "Always could." Her voice was rough, like she hadn't used it in a while, or maybe like talking in human language hurt. Most humans never bothered to listen. Garrett set down the water bowl carefully, his mind racing. 15 years ago, there had been rumors, whispers among soldiers that dragons might be more than animals. But Command had shut down those rumors fast, reassigned anyone who asked too many questions, destroyed any evidence that might prove it true. He had found evidence once. He had burned it. "What's your name?" he asked. "Frost." She gestured with her muzzle toward the 2 males. "My brothers, Ridge and Storm. I'm Garrett." "I know." Frost tilted her head, studying him. "You're the hunter who stopped hunting. The one who disappeared after the siege of Broken Peak. Dragon mothers tell stories about you to their younglings. A warning and a question both." Garrett's stomach twisted. "A warning about what?" "That humans can change their minds. Sometimes too late." Frost's gaze didn't waver. "The question is whether you changed because you learned the truth, or because you got tired of killing." He could have lied. Should have lied. But those golden eyes seemed to see through any deception he might offer. "Both," he admitted. "I found journals. In a nest after we cleared it. They were written in Galactic Common. Poetry, philosophy, star charts drawn by hand." He looked down at his scarred hands. "I burned them. Told myself I was protecting my squad from knowing what we had done, but really I was protecting myself." "And now?" Frost asked. "Now 3 dragons showed up dying on my porch and I couldn't let it happen again." The middle male, Storm, stirred and lifted his head. His scales were darker than Frost's, gray like thunderclouds. He looked between his sister and Garrett, then spoke in a language of clicks and low rumbles. "Dragon speech," Frost answered in the same language, then switched back to Common. "Storm asks if you're the one who killed the archive keepers at Broken Peak." Garrett felt cold that had nothing to do with Bjornheim's weather. "Yes. Then Ridge will want to kill you when he wakes." Frost said it matter-of-factly, like she was discussing the weather. "Our mother was archive keeper there. She died holding your unit off while younglings escaped into the ice caves." "I didn't know there were younglings," Garrett said quietly. "Command told us we were clearing out predators that were attacking colonists. There were 43 younglings. Storm spoke for the first time, his voice deeper than Frost's. 17 survived the winter. The rest starved or froze. Garrett had no words that could answer that. Nothing he said would matter. Nothing would change what he had done. Ridge stirred, groaning. His eyes opened slowly, unfocused at first. Then they found Garrett and went sharp with recognition and rage. He lunged. Frost threw herself between them, smaller but faster. She hit Ridge's shoulder with enough force to knock him sideways. He snarled something in dragon speech, trying to push past her. Storm joined her, the two of them blocking Ridge from reaching Garrett. "He saved us," Frost said in common, making sure Ridge understood. "He pulled us inside. Tended our wounds. He could have called hunters. He could have killed us himself. He didn't." "He's a butcher," Ridge snarled back, also in common. His voice was rough with pain and fury. "He killed Mother. Killed hundreds, thousands." "I know," Garrett said. He hadn't moved, hadn't reached for a weapon. If Ridge got past Frost and Storm, he wouldn't stop him. "You're right. About all of it." Ridge stared at him, breathing hard. "Then why? Why save us now?" "Because I can't bring back the ones I killed. But maybe I can keep 3 more from dying." Garrett met the dragon's furious gaze. "It's not enough." "It'll never be enough. But it's all I've got." The barn fell silent except for Ridge's heavy breathing and the wind outside. Finally, Storm spoke. "We need him, Ridge. You know we do." "Need him for what?" Garrett asked. Frost settled back, her torn wings folding carefully against her sides. "We're running from a corporation called Helix Industries. They found our nest 2 weeks ago. Not to kill us for bound to your territory. To harvest us." "Harvest?" "Dragons have certain biological compounds in our bone marrow and brain tissue. Helix discovered they can extend human lifespans. Potentially indefinitely." Frost's voice went flat. "They killed our parents. Killed our siblings. Cut them apart while some were still alive. We escaped through a wormhole relay before they could take us too." Garrett felt sick. "How many siblings?" 12, Storm said quietly. "All younger than us. And Helix has legal rights," Frost continued. "Dragons aren't classified as sentient by the Galactic Council. We're listed as unprotected fauna. That means corporations can do whatever they want with us. No laws broken." "That's insane. That's politics." Frost looked at him steadily. "Corporate lobbying convinced the council that evidence of dragon intelligence was faked. That we're clever animals at best, like trained pets. As long as that classification stands, Helix can legally harvest every dragon they find." Ridge had stopped struggling against his siblings. He was listening now, his rage transforming into something colder and more focused. "We came to Bjornheim randomly," Frost said. "The wormhole relay was damaged. We barely survived the transit. But Dragon Oral History remembers you, Garrett Hale. The human who walked away, who built a cabin in the frozen waste and never hunted again." She paused. "We need to reach Sanctuary Station in the Kuiper Belt. There's a human scientist there who has been documenting dragon sentience for decades. If we can testify before the Council's Ethics Committee, if we can prove we're sentient, everything changes. Helix will come looking for you here," Garrett said. "They're already looking. They have our genetic markers. Their scanning equipment can track us across star systems." Frost met his eyes. "We needed somewhere to heal first. Somewhere unexpected. The cabin of a famous dragon hunter seemed about as unexpected as it gets." Garrett processed this. 3 wounded dragons. A corporate death squad. A journey across hostile space to reach a station that might not even be able to help. The smart thing would be to refuse. Send them away before Helix arrived. Return to his quiet isolation. But he thought about the journals he had burned. About 43 younglings, 17 survivors. About 12 siblings cut apart while still breathing. "How long to reach Sanctuary Station?" he asked. Frost's eyes brightened with something like hope. 3 weeks. If we can get past corporate checkpoints. Thought I've got a ship. Old cargo hauler, but she's sound. And I still have some contacts who owe me favors." Garrett looked at Ridge. "Your sister's right. You probably should kill me. But if you want to stop Helix from doing to others what they did to your family, you need me alive a little longer." Ridge stared at him for a long moment. Then slowly he lowered his head. "Not submission. Just exhausted acceptance. 3 weeks," Ridge said. "Then we'll see." Outside, snow continued to fall, and somewhere above Bjornheim's frozen sky, ships were searching. Garrett's perimeter alarms woke him before dawn, a soft beeping from the monitor beside his bed. He was up and armed in seconds, old training taking over before conscious thought caught up. The display showed 6 heat signatures approaching through the trees. Human-sized, moving in tactical formation. Professional. He dressed quickly, pulled on his heavy coat and grabbed his rifle. Through the window he could see them now. Dark shapes against the snow. They wore winter gear marked with corporate logos. Helix. Garrett stepped out onto his porch, making sure to close the door firmly behind him. The barn was 50 yards away, silent and dark. He had to keep their attention away from it. The figures stopped at his property line, weapons lowered but ready. A woman stepped forward, pulling down her face mask. She was maybe 35, with sharp eyes and the confident stance of someone used to getting what she wanted. "Garrett Hale?" she called out. "That's right. You're on private property. My name is Strand. I'm head of security for Helix Industries." She smiled, friendly and cold at the same time. "We're tracking some escaped assets. 3 juvenile dragons. Our equipment shows they landed in this area 4 days ago." "Haven't seen any dragons," Garrett said. "Been pretty quiet out here." Strand pulled out a tablet, tapped the screen a few times. She turned it around so he could see. Heat signature images, clearly showing 3 large forms near his coordinates. Timestamp from 3 days ago. "Our scanners are very accurate," she said. "The signatures were right here, Mr. Hale, near your cabin." Garrett studied the display, letting his face show nothing. The signatures were clear enough, but the exact location was fuzzy. Mountains and volcanic vents could throw off readings. He was counting on that. "There's a thermal vent field about 20 miles southeast of here," he said, pointing. "Gets hot enough to melt snow year-round. Dragons sometimes nest there during bad weather. Could be what your scanner picked up." Strand studied him carefully. "You were Colonial Defense Force, decorated war hero. Led more successful dragon hunts than any other unit commander. That was a long time ago. Why'd you quit?" "Got tired of killing." "Interesting timing. Right after the Broken Peak operation." Strand stepped closer, her boots crunching in the snow. "That's where we found our first viable specimens. The archive keeper nest. You were the one who cleared it." Garrett's grip tightened on his rifle. "Like I said, that was a long time ago. Helix is prepared to offer 200,000 credits for information leading to the recovery of our assets," Strand said. "No questions asked. Just point us in the right direction. 200,000 credits. Enough to live comfortably for years. Enough to finally fix everything wrong with his ship. Maybe even buy a new one. Leave Bjornheim behind. Start fresh somewhere the ghosts couldn't find him." He thought about Frost's golden eyes. About Ridge's fury. About 12 siblings cut apart for their bone marrow. "Southeast," he repeated. "Thermal vents. That's all I know." Strand held his gaze for another long moment, then nodded. "We'll check it out. But Mr. Hale, if we find out you're lying, obstruction of corporate operations is a serious crime. Helix has very good lawyers. I'm sure you do." She signaled to her team and they moved out, heading southeast like he had suggested. Garrett watched until they disappeared into the trees. Only then did he allow himself to breathe normally again. He went to the barn. The 3 dragons were awake, pressed against the far wall. Ridge's scales were bristled, his body tense to fight. Storm looked ready to bolt. Frost stood between them, calm but alert. "They're gone," Garrett said, "but I bought us maybe a day, 2 at most. Once they realize the thermal vents are a dead end, they'll come back with better equipment." "We should leave now," Ridge growled. "Before they return, you're not healed enough for a long journey. Storm's ribs aren't fully set. Frost's wings need another few days." "Better injured and free than dead," Ridge shot back. "He's right," Frost said quietly. She looked at Garrett. "We've put you in danger long enough." Garrett shook his head. "We leave tonight. Together. I need to prep my ship anyway, load supplies. You 3 rest and eat. Build your strength." He spent the day working on the Wandering Bear, his old cargo hauler. She was 30 years old, battered and patched, but her engines were solid and her life support systems were reliable. He had kept her maintained even during his years of isolation, some part of him always knowing he might need to run. He modified 3 cargo containers, installing life support and padding. Not comfortable, but dragons could survive inside them during checkpoint inspections. He loaded medical supplies, food concentrates, water recyclers, enough for 3 weeks if they rationed carefully. While he worked, Storm appeared at the ship's cargo ramp. The dragon moved awkwardly, his ribs clearly still paining him. "Can I help?" Storm asked. Garrett looked at him, surprised. "You should be resting." "I've been resting for 4 days." I'd rather be useful. Storm looked around the cargo bay. What needs doing? They worked together through the afternoon. Storm's strength, even injured, was impressive. He could lift containers that would have taken Garrett an hour to move with mechanical assistance. And he was smart, understanding Garrett's instructions quickly, asking good questions about the ship's systems. You like machines, Garrett observed. Dragons were engineers before humans left Earth, Storm said. We built cities in the ice, developed metallurgy using geothermal vents. We just never went to space. Didn't see the point when everything we needed was on our world. What happened? Why did humans never know about you? Storm was quiet for a moment, securing a cargo net. We hid. When humans developed space travel, we saw what they did to other species. How they classified things. Sentient, non-sentient. Protected, unprotected. We decided to be forgotten instead of classified. But you were found anyway. Climate change drove us from deep ice caverns to surface nests. Human colonies expanded. Contact became inevitable. Storm's voice went hard. We thought if we revealed ourselves slowly, proved our sentience carefully, humans would accept us. We were wrong. Garrett didn't know what to say to that. Every word Storm spoke was an accusation he deserved. They finished loading as darkness fell. Garrett went to gather the dragons while Storm stayed with the ship. He found Frost and Ridge in the barn, having what looked like an intense conversation in their own language. They both fell silent when he entered. Something wrong? Garrett asked. Ridge turned away, his tail lashing. Frost sighed. Ridge found something while you were working. She gestured with her snout. There in the corner of the barn was the box Garrett kept hidden under old tarps. His old military gear. Medals, citations, photos. I can explain. Garrett started. The Silver Star, Ridge interrupted, his voice shaking with suppressed rage. The Medal of Valor. Commendations for extraordinary action in the face of dangerous predators. 15 citations. 43 confirmed kills. He spun to face Garrett. 43. The same number as the younglings at Broken Peak. Ridge, Frost said softly. No. He wants us to trust him, to get in his ship and let him fly us across the galaxy. He's killed more dragons than most humans will ever see. He's a hero for it. They gave him medals. I threw them away, Garrett said. Or I tried to. Couldn't quite do it. Couldn't quite face what keeping them meant, but couldn't throw them away either. He looked at Ridge directly. You want to know the truth? I'm a coward. I burned evidence of dragon sentience because I couldn't handle knowing what I had done. I came here to hide because I couldn't face anyone who knew my name. And I keep those medals because some sick part of me still wants to believe I was a hero instead of a mass murderer. The barn fell silent. But none of that matters now. Garrett continued. What matters is Helix is coming back. What matters is there are more dragons out there about to suffer what your family suffered. I can't undo what I did. But maybe if we reach Sanctuary Station, I can stop it from happening to others. Ridge stared at him for a long time. Then he spoke so quietly Garrett almost missed it. My mother's name was Ember Sky. She was 300 years old. She could recite the history of 17 dragon clans from memory. She taught younglings mathematics using star patterns. Ridge's voice broke. You killed her defending children you didn't even know existed. I know, Garrett whispered. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't bring her back. Sorry doesn't warm the younglings who froze. Ridge's golden eyes blazed. But my mother would have wanted me to stop others from dying. Even if it means working with her killer. He turned and limped toward the ship, his injured leg dragging slightly in the snow. Frost waited until he was gone, then looked at Garrett. For what it's worth, I believe you've changed. Ridge does too. That's what makes it so hard. She followed her brother, leaving Garrett alone in the barn with his box of medals and his memories. An hour later, the wandering bear lifted off from Bjornheim's frozen surface. In the cargo hold, 3 dragons lay hidden in modified containers. In the cockpit, a man who had once been a hero flew toward redemption or death. Behind them, Helix security forces returned to find an empty cabin and cold ashes. The jump through the relay gate felt like being turned inside out and put back together wrong. Garrett had made hundreds of these transitions during his military service, but it never got easier. His stomach lurched as the wandering bear dropped. Back into normal space, stars appearing where there had been nothing but the strange non-color of faster-than-light travel. From the cargo hold he heard retching sounds. Dragons apparently handled FTL travel even worse than humans. He set the ship on autopilot and went back to check on them. Frost was pressed against the wall of her container, breathing hard. Storm looked miserable, but stable. Ridge was actively sick, his whole body shaking. "This is normal," Garrett assured them, opening the containers now that they were safely away from the gate's scanning equipment. "Your inner ear gets confused by the transition. It passes." "How many more jumps?" Frost asked weakly. 5 to reach Sanctuary Station, each one about 3 days apart. Ridge made a sound that might have been a groan or a curse in dragon language. Garrett brought them water and the anti-nausea medication he used to give wounded soldiers. It helped, slowly. Within an hour, they were well enough to move around the cargo bay. Storm immediately went to study the ship's systems, fascinated by the engine displays. Frost rested near the heating units. Ridge stayed in his corner, watching Garrett with wary eyes. They fell into a routine over the next few days. Garrett piloted during waking hours, the dragons rested and healed. At night, during the automated watch shifts, they talked. Storm was the easiest. He asked endless questions about human technology, comparing it to dragon methods. Apparently, dragons had developed advanced metallurgy and geothermal engineering, but had never needed electronics or space travel. Their civilization had been content to remain on their homeworld, building deep into the ice instead of up into the sky. "We thought we were safe," Storm said on the third night. "Hidden in our caverns, keeping to ourselves. We didn't realize humans would come looking for resources in the deep ice. Didn't realize how valuable we would become." "How many dragons are left?" Garrett asked. "Nobody knows. Thousands, maybe, scattered across dozens of worlds, hiding in places humans haven't fully explored yet. But every year, more nests are found. More dragons disappear." Storm looked at him. "Your war killed hundreds. Helix's harvest operations have killed thousands." Frost joined their conversations more slowly. She spent long hours speaking softly with Ridge in their own language, clearly trying to ease her brother's pain. But eventually she began teaching Garrett about dragon culture. "We're lore keepers," she explained. "Every clan has them. We memorize history, laws, stories, everything important. Because we didn't develop writing until much later than humans. We learned to remember perfectly." "How much can you remember?" "Everything I've ever heard, seen, or experienced." "Every dragon can do this to some degree, but lore keepers train for it specifically." She tilted her head. "I could tell you exactly what you said 4 days ago when you first found us. Every word, every expression on your face." Garrett felt cold. "Then you remember every dragon I killed?" "We have records of the culling wars, yes. Oral histories from survivors." Frost was quiet for a moment. "Ridge knows exactly how many dragons you killed. Their names, their ages, their clans. He's been carrying that information like a weight since we left Bjornheim." "Why tell me this?" "Because you need to understand what you're asking him to do. You're asking him to trust someone who killed his mother, his uncle, 3 cousins, and 7 clan members he grew up with. You're asking him to share a ship with you for 3 weeks, knowing exactly what you've done. I never asked him to forgive me." "No," Frost agreed. "You just asked him to let you help. Somehow that's harder." Ridge himself rarely spoke to Garrett. But on the 5th night, after their second jump, something changed. Garrett was doing maintenance in the cargo bay when Ridge approached. The dragon moved quietly for something so large. "Storm tells me you were a good soldier," Ridge said without preamble. "That you followed orders, believed what your commanders told you." "Yes." "Do you think that matters? That you were lied to about what we were?" Garrett considered this carefully. "No. I should have questioned it sooner, should have seen the signs." "What signs?" "The way dragons defended your nests, the patterns in how you built them, the fact that you used tools." Garrett sat back against a cargo container. "I told myself you were just clever animals, like some Earth species that use basic tools. But deep down I knew better." Ridge was quiet, processing this. Then he said something unexpected. "My mother saw your unit coming. She could have fled with the younglings. Instead, she sent them into the caves and stayed to delay you, to give them time to escape. I know. She bought them 47 minutes. I know because I was one of the younglings. I counted every minute in the dark, listening to the weapons fire above. Ridge's claws scraped against the metal floor. When it stopped, I knew she was dead. But I didn't know which human killed her, didn't have a face to attach to the rage. Garrett met his eyes. Now you do. Yes. And I find that you're not what I expected. You're not a monster. You're just a person who did monstrous things and has been running from it ever since. Ridge moved closer. I don't forgive you, I may never forgive you, but Frost is right, we need you. And maybe you need this too. A chance to do something right. It won't balance the scales. No. But it's something. Ridge turned to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, Mother used to say that humans were the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Not because you're the strongest or the smartest, but because you can't stop. Can't leave things alone. Can't accept that some questions don't need answering. She said that made you terrible enemies, but potentially powerful allies. Which am I? I don't know yet. They passed through 2 more jump gates without incident. Garrett's old military contacts came through, providing safe harbor codes and routing around corporate checkpoints. They stopped once at a neutral fuel depot, the dragons hiding in their containers while Garrett negotiated for supplies. He was loading the last of the fuel canisters when his communicator chimed. Incoming message, civilian band. He almost ignored it, but something made him check. The message was simple. Helix hunting 3 assets. Reward increased to 500,000 credits. Ship ID flagged in Bounty Network. Good luck, old friend. It was signed by Wilson, a man Garrett had served with 15 years ago. A warning, not a threat. Garrett deleted the message and went back inside. The dragons looked at him expectantly. We have a problem, he said. Helix flagged my ship in the Bounty Network. Every mercenary and treasure hunter in the sector will be looking for us now. Can we reach Sanctuary Station before they find us? Frost asked. Maybe, if we're lucky. But we need to stop at 1 more fuel depot. It's in the Broken Ring asteroid field. Neutral territory, supposed to be safe. He paused. Supposed to be? You think it's a trap, Ridge said. I think 500,000 credits buys a lot of cooperation. Storm spoke up. What if we don't stop? Push straight through to Sanctuary? We'd run out of fuel about 6 hours from the station. Be dead in space. Perfect target for anyone looking. The dragons exchanged glances, having a conversation in expressions and subtle body language that Garrett couldn't follow. Finally, Frost spoke. We trust your judgment. You've gotten us this far. I might be leading you into an ambush. Then you'll be in that ambush with us, Ridge said. There was something almost like respect in his voice. You could have turned us in at any point, claimed the reward, disappeared. You haven't. Not yet anyway, Storm added, but he was almost smiling when he said it. They reached the Broken Ring depot 2 days later. It was a small station, built into a hollowed-out asteroid. Minimal staff, minimal questions. Perfect for smugglers and people who didn't want attention. Garrett approached slowly, scanning for unusual activity. Everything looked normal. Ships docked and undocked in the regular flow of commerce. No obvious military presence, no corporate vessels. Seems clear, he said, but his instinct screamed otherwise. We'll stay ready, Frost said. She and her brothers returned to their containers, but this time they stayed alert inside, ready to burst out if needed. Garrett docked and began the refueling process. The station seemed quiet. Too quiet, maybe. The usual bustle of a fuel depot was missing. Where were the other travelers? The maintenance crews? He was connecting the last fuel line when he saw them. Reflections in his cockpit window. 4 figures moving too carefully, too precisely. Military training or professional mercenaries. The jackals had found them. Garrett's hand moved to the emergency release for the fuel lines, but he was too slow. The docking clamps engaged, locking the wandering bear in place. Red lights flashed, hull breach protocol. They were boarding. He hit the intercom. Dragons, we've got company, they're coming in hard. From the cargo bay, he heard the containers bursting open. 3 dragons, wounded but furious, ready to fight. Garrett grabbed his rifle and ran toward the cargo bay. This was going to get bloody. The first mercenary through the cargo bay door never saw what hit him. Ridge's tail whipped out of the shadows, catching the man in the chest hard enough to send him flying back through the hatch. His scream cut off when he hit the far wall of the docking tube. Garrett was already moving, using the cargo containers for cover. He had done this before, defending ships in tight quarters. The trick was to force them into a bottleneck, make their numbers work against them. 2 more mercenaries pushed through, smarter than the first. They came in low with riot shields raised, neural disruptors set to heavy stun. Perfect for taking down large targets without killing them. Helix wanted the dragons alive. Storm hit them from above. Dragons could climb, something most people forgot. He dropped from where he had been clinging to the ceiling supports, his weight crushing one shield flat and sending its owner sprawling. The second mercenary got a shot off. The disruptor bolt caught Storm in the shoulder and he roared in pain, but his momentum carried him forward. His jaws closed on the weapon, crushing it. Frost moved like water, flowing between containers. A mercenary tried to track her with his weapon, but she was already behind him. Her claws raked across his armor, not deep enough to kill, but enough to put him down. Garrett dropped the 4th one with a clean shot to the leg. Not lethal, but the man wasn't getting up anytime soon. "There'll be more," Garrett shouted. They wouldn't send just 4 for this payout, he was right. Alarms were blaring through the station now. More footsteps echoed in the docking tube. A lot more. Ridge moved to the hatch, his body blocking it completely. "How many can you hear?" "At least 10. Maybe 15. Garrett was reloading. "They'll have heavy weapons if they're smart." "We need to get the ship free," Frost said. "Can you release the docking clamps from inside?" "Not with them active. Someone has to override them from the station control room." Storm was pulling the disruptor bolt from his shoulder, grimacing. "Then we fight our way to the control room. That's suicide. This is their territory. They'll have every advantage." "You have a better idea?" Ridge growled. Garrett thought fast. The station layout, what he remembered from dozens of stops over the years. Control room was 3 levels up, central hub. Too far, too exposed. But there was another option. Emergency decompression, he said. "If we trigger the hull breach protocol for this section, everyone has to evacuate or they die. 90 seconds from alarm to hard vacuum. Including us," Frost pointed out. "We get back in the ship and seal it. We've got our own life support. We can survive decompression. And if they seal the blast doors before we're inside?" Garrett met her eyes. "Then we die. But it's better odds than fighting 15 mercenaries in close quarters." The dragons exchanged looks. Ridge spoke first. "Do it." Garrett moved to the wall panel, pulling up the emergency systems. This was going to be tricky. He needed to give them enough warning to get inside, but not so much that the mercenaries could counter the protocol. His fingers flew over the controls, finding the right commands. Bypass, override, there. He hit the final sequence, alarms changed pitch. The station's automated voice began speaking. "Emergency decompression protocol activated. All personnel evacuate immediately. 90 seconds to hard vacuum. Move," Garrett shouted. The dragons bolted for the ship. Storm was limping from his wounded shoulder. Frost helped support him. Ridge brought up the rear, turning to guard their retreat. The mercenaries realized what was happening too late. They came boiling through the hatch, but now they were panicking, trying to get back to safe zones. One of them tried to grab Ridge as he passed. The dragon's jaws snapped closed on the man's arm, not biting through but holding him. Ridge dragged him forward 3 steps, then released him. The mercenary fell, clutching his arm. 60 seconds to hard vacuum. Garrett was the last one in. He slammed the cargo bay door and locked it. "Everybody brace. This is going to get rough." The ship's systems registered the decompression. External sensors showed the docking tube beginning to vent atmosphere. Frost, Storm, and Ridge pressed themselves against the cargo containers, claws extended to hold themselves in place. 30 seconds to hard vacuum. The mercenaries were gone now, fled to sealed sections. Through the external cameras, Garrett could see them beyond the blast doors, weapons ready but helpless to reach their prey. 10 seconds to hard vacuum. Garrett's hands moved across the controls. The moment those docking clamps released, they had to be ready to move. One chance, no room for error. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The world went silent. In vacuum, there was no sound. The docking clamps released automatically, a safety protocol to prevent damage to ships during decompression events. The wandering bear drifted free. Garrett fired maneuvering thrusters immediately, putting distance between them and the station. Behind them, he could see mercenaries at the viewports watching their payday float away. Once they were clear, he allowed himself to breathe. The dragons were climbing to their feet, checking each other for injuries. "Everyone okay?" he asked. "Storm needs medical attention," Frost said. "That disruptor bolt did more damage than it should have." Garrett helped Storm to the medical bay, such as it was. The dragon lay down carefully and Garrett examined the wound. It was bad. The bolt had burned deep, and dragon physiology was different enough from human that his standard treatments might not work properly. "I've got broad-spectrum antibiotics and burn gel," he said, "but I'm not sure how much it'll help." "Do what you can," Storm said through gritted teeth. As Garrett worked, Ridge appeared in the doorway. He watched in silence for a moment, then spoke. "You could have run. When the decompression started, you could have sealed yourself in the cockpit and left us to deal with the vacuum." "The thought didn't even occur to me," Garrett admitted. "Why not?" "Because you're my crew now, I guess." "You don't abandon crew." Ridge was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something in dragon language, soft and formal. Frost, who was standing behind him, translated. He said, "You fight well for a human." "That's a compliment," Frost added. From Ridge, it's a big one. Garrett finished bandaging Storm's shoulder and sat back. "We need to talk about what comes next. That station will report what happened. Helix will know exactly where we are now. And we're still 3 days from Sanctuary Station. Can we make it?" Storm asked. "Maybe, if we push the engines hard and don't stop." Garrett hesitated, then continued. "But there's something else. When I accessed the station systems to trigger the decompression, I saw their communication logs. Helix isn't just hunting you three anymore." "What do you mean?" Frost's voice went very quiet. "They found a breeding population, 200 dragons hidden in ice caverns on a planet called Frostmark Prime. Helix has scheduled full harvest operations to begin in 2 weeks." The cargo bay fell silent. 200 dragons, an entire community, about to be slaughtered for their bone marrow and brain tissue. Ridge spoke first, his voice shaking. "We have to warn them. We can't reach them in time," Garrett said. "Frostmark Prime is on the other side of the sector. It would take 5 weeks to get there, even pushing hard." "Then what do we do?" Storm demanded. "Just let them die?" "No." Garrett stood up, decision crystallizing. "We do exactly what we planned. We reach Sanctuary Station. We testify before the Ethics Committee. We prove dragon sentience, because if we can do that, if we can change your legal status from unprotected fauna to sentient beings, everything Helix is doing becomes illegal, all their operations, all their harvest sites. And if we can't?" Frost asked. "If the Council refuses to change the classification, then 200 dragons die and nobody will be able to stop it." Garrett met each of their eyes in turn. "But if we do this right, if we make them see what you are, we save not just those 200 but every dragon still in hiding." "That's a lot of weight to put on 3 wounded refugees," Ridge said quietly. "I know, but you're all we've got." Storm struggled to his feet, wincing. "Then we better not waste it. How long until we reach Sanctuary Station?" 72 hours. And we need to go dark. No communications, no stops, nothing that might give away our position. What about the mercenaries? The jackals or whoever they were? They'll come after us. Probably already are. Garrett pulled up a star chart. But space is big. If we're smart and lucky, we can stay ahead of them long enough to reach Sanctuary. Frost moved closer to the chart, studying it with her perfect lore-keeper memory. "There's a debris field here. Old battlefield from the colony wars. If we cut through it instead of around, we might lose anyone tracking us. That field is full of unexploded ordnance and shipwrecks. Navigation is nightmare. Can you do it?" Garrett thought about the 3 dragons standing in his cargo bay. About 200 more waiting to die on Frostmark Prime. About all the ones he had killed 15 years ago. "Yes," he said, "I can do it." They plotted their course through the debris field. It would save them 6 hours and make them nearly impossible to track. It was also incredibly dangerous. One wrong move and they would end up as just another wreck floating in the dark. As they prepared to enter the field, Frost spoke quietly. Garrett, when we reach Sanctuary Station, when we testify, they're going to ask about the culling wars, about what happened to dragon nests. I know. If we tell the truth, if we show the council exactly what was done to us, you'll be implicated. War crimes, genocide. She looked at him directly. You could spend the rest of your life in prison. Garrett had thought about this, had known it was coming since the moment he agreed to help them. Good, he said. Maybe I should have been there 15 years ago. Ridge spoke up, surprisingly gentle. Mother used to say the bravest thing a person can do is face what they've done and try to make it right, even when the cost is everything. Sounds like she was wise. She was. Ridge's eyes reflected sadness and something else, something like respect. I think she would have liked you. Eventually, the wandering bear entered the debris field, and for 3 days they flew through the ghosts of old wars, carrying the hope of preventing new ones. Sanctuary Station appeared on their sensors like a promise. Small, functional, orbiting in the dark cold of the Kuiper Belt where corporate ships rarely ventured. Garrett had pushed the wandering bear to her limits getting here, and the old ship was running on fumes and prayer. Dr. Amara Lynn was waiting at the dock when they arrived. She was 60 years old, with gray hair pulled back in a practical bun and eyes that missed nothing. She had spent 35 years documenting dragon sentience in secret, collecting evidence that the Galactic Council refused to acknowledge. When the cargo bay opened and 3 dragons emerged, she smiled. Not surprised, just satisfied. You made it, she said simply. Barely, Garrett replied. Helix is behind us. Maybe 2 hours, maybe less. Then we better hurry. The ethics committee is in session now. Emergency protocols. I pulled every favor I had to get them to convene. She looked at the dragons. Are you ready? Frost stepped forward. We're ready. The testimony chamber was smaller than Garrett expected. A round room with displays showing the faces of 15 council members from different species. They floated in holographic windows, watching with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. The council chair, a Talarian diplomat named something unpronounceable, opened the session. Dr. Lin, you've called an emergency session with claims that dragons are sentient beings. This council has examined such claims before and found them lacking. Previous examinations relied on second-hand documentation. Dr. Lin said calmly, I have brought primary sources, living witnesses who can testify directly. Murmurs rippled through the council. Several members leaned forward, interested despite themselves. Frost moved to the center of the room. She had prepared for this, but Garrett could see her nervousness in the way her tail moved, the slight tremor in her wings. My name is Frost. I am a lore keeper of the Winter Reach clan. I speak not just for myself, but for 50,000 years of dragon civilization. Dragons have no civilization, interrupted a human council member, a woman whose badge identified her as a corporate representative. You're well-trained animals, possibly programmed with false memories by activists. Then let me prove otherwise. Frost's voice was steady. Your star charts show a constellation you call the Hunter. We call it the Running One. We named it 8,000 years before humans left Earth. We calculated its distance from our world using parallax measurements, 47.3 light years. Your modern equipment confirms 47.2, she continued, reciting mathematics, astronomical observations, philosophical treatises that had been passed down through generations of dragon lore keepers. Things no animal could know. Things that predated human spaceflight by millennia. Storm spoke next, describing dragon engineering, how they had built vast cities in the ice using geothermal power, how they had developed advanced metallurgy and architectural techniques that human colonists only discovered when they literally stumbled into abandoned dragon settlements. Ridge's testimony was shorter but powerful. He described the day Helix came to his nest, how his parents had tried to negotiate, to prove their sentience, to beg for their children's lives, how they were sedated and dissected anyway, how he had hidden with his siblings and listened to their parents screaming. The chamber was silent when he finished. Dr. Lin presented her evidence next. 35 years of documentation, dragon art, dragon music recorded in hidden observation posts, mathematical proofs created by dragons who thought they were alone, written texts in dragon script that predated human contact. The council chair called for debate. Several members argued for recognition immediately. Others hesitated, citing corporate concerns and economic impacts. The human representative opposed it vigorously, clearly on Helix's payroll. Even if dragons show intelligence, she argued, many of them have attacked human settlements. They're dangerous, unpredictable. We need time to study them properly before granting full sentient status. Study them? Ridge's voice cut through the chamber. You mean harvest them? Cut them apart while they're still alive. That's what Helix means by study. We need only a few more weeks to examine the implications, the corporate representative insisted. A rushed decision could have serious economic consequences. And in those few weeks, Helix will harvest 200 dragons on Frostmark Prime, Garrett said quietly. He had been silent until now, standing in the shadows. They've already scheduled the operation. Every eye turned to him. The council chair leaned forward. And you are? Garrett Hale, former Colonial Defense Force. I led dragon culling operations during the wars. The chamber erupted. Council members talking over each other. The corporate representative smiled, sensing an advantage. So we have a known dragon hunter vouching for dragon rights? Convenient. I'm not vouching for anything, Garrett interrupted. I'm confessing. To war crimes, to genocide, to the systematic slaughter of sentient beings. The room went silent again. Garrett stepped forward, and now everyone could see him clearly. 15 years ago at Broken Peak, I led the assault on what Command called a dangerous nest. We killed 43 dragons. I personally shot and killed a female we identified as the nest leader. After the battle, I found journals in the nest. Written in Galactic Common, they were poetry, philosophy, astronomical observations, proof that dragons were sentient. What did you do with this evidence? The council chair asked quietly. I burned it. I burned it all because I couldn't face what it meant. That I had spent 5 years killing people, not animals. That every medal they gave me was for murder. Garrett's voice was steady, but his hands shook. I've lived with that knowledge for 15 years. Alone, hiding, trying to pretend it didn't matter. He pulled out a data pad and held it up. This contains my personal logs. Confessions I recorded in isolation. Details of every operation I led. Names of commanders who knew dragons were sentient and ordered us to kill them anyway. Locations of mass graves we tried to hide, everything. Why reveal this now? Someone asked. Because 3 dragons showed up dying on my porch and I couldn't let it happen again. Because there are 200 more about to die if we don't stop this. Because the only way to make any of this right is to tell the truth, no matter the cost. The corporate representative tried to object. This man is clearly unstable. His testimony is compromised by guilt and his testimony is corroborated by military records I obtained through official channels. Dr. Lin interrupted. She projected documents across the chamber displays. After-action reports that matched Garrett's confession. Suppressed intelligence briefings about dragon sentience. Orders from high command to destroy evidence and silence dissenting soldiers. The council erupted in debate. Arguments flew back and forth. Economic concerns versus moral imperatives. Corporate rights versus sentient rights. Legal precedent versus ethical necessity. Finally, the council chair called for a vote. It was close. Too close. Corporate-friendly members voted against recognition. Military representatives abstained. Several members clearly wanted more time to consider. When the final count came in, it was 8 votes for recognition, 7 against. They needed 9 for a majority decision. The corporate representative smiled. Motion fails. Dragons remain classified as unprotected fauna. This session is... I change my vote. Everyone turned to look at the speaker, a military representative, a retired general who had been silent throughout the session. I served in the colony wars, the general said. I gave the orders that sent men like Garrett Hale into those nests. I knew, I always knew, and I did nothing because it was easier than facing the truth. He looked at Garrett through the holographic display. I won't make that mistake again. I vote for recognition. 9 votes for recognition. The motion passed. Dragons were officially recognized as sentient beings. Every Helix operation became illegal in that instant. Every harvest site, every research facility, every ship carrying dragon specimens. The chamber erupted in chaos. The corporate representative was screaming about appeals and legal challenges. Dr. Lin was crying. The dragon stood still, barely believing what had just happened. Alarms began blaring. Station security calling. Helix ships had arrived at the station perimeter. 3 vessels heavily armed. They were demanding the return of their property. They're claiming existing contracts supersede the council ruling, the station director reported. They say the dragons were already in their custody before the vote. They want them back pending appeal. Absolutely not, Dr. Lin said. Those are sentient beings, not property. Tell them to get in line with every other kidnapper in the galaxy, Ridge growled. The council chair's image reappeared on the displays. Sanctuary Station is neutral territory under council jurisdiction. Those ships will withdraw immediately or face military intervention. They're not withdrawing, the director reported. They're launching boarding craft. Garrett moved to the weapons locker on instinct. But before he could arm himself, something else appeared on the sensors. Ships. Lots of them. Dropping out of FTL all around Sanctuary Station, 17 vessels, cargo haulers, patrol ships, even a few old military cruisers. They formed a defensive ring around the station. This is the cargo ship Fortune's Favor, a voice crackled over the comms. We heard there might be trouble at Sanctuary Station. Figured you could use some company. More voices chimed in. Independent traders, free colonists, former soldiers who had served with Garrett, people who hated corporate overreach or who had been waiting for someone to finally stand up to Helix. This is the patrol ship Dancing Light. We stand with Sanctuary. Station, mining vessel stones. Edge, we've got your back. One by one, they declared themselves. A fleet of misfits and outcasts and people who believed that right mattered more than profit. The Helix ships held position for another tense minute. Then slowly they began to withdraw. 3 ships against 17 were bad odds, even for a corporation used to getting its way. As they disappeared from sensors, the station erupted in cheers. Dr. Lin pulled Garrett into a fierce hug. The dragons stood together, wings touching, barely able to process that they had won. But Garrett knew it wasn't over. Helix will appeal. They'll fight this through every legal channel they have. Let them, Dr. Lin said. Now we have time. Time to locate other dragon populations. Time to set up protections. Time to rescue the ones on Frostmark Prime. We need to send ships there immediately, Frost said, before Helix can move on their operations. Already done, the council chair confirmed. Council peacekeepers are en route. They'll arrive at Frostmark Prime within 30 hours. 30 hours. The dragons on Frostmark Prime would survive. Not all of them. Not the ones Helix had already taken, but most. The community would survive. Station security appeared then, their expressions grim. Garrett Hale, you're under arrest for war crimes. The council has issued a warrant for your testimony. Garrett nodded. He had known this was coming. Had accepted it the moment he decided to confess. I understand. Ridge stepped forward. Wait. In dragon law, there's something called the debt of blood. When someone saves your life, you owe them protection until that debt is repaid. This isn't dragon law, the security officer said. No, but it's sentient law now. Ridge looked at the council chair's image. Garrett Hale saved our lives. Risked his own freedom to bring us here. He could have turned us in at any time for reward. He didn't. Under dragon law, we have the right to speak on his behalf. The council chair considered this. Very well. At his trial, you may testify. Not trial, Frost interrupted. Truth Commission. Garrett isn't the only one guilty. He named his commanders. Named the officials who ordered evidence destroyed. If you want real justice, you need to prosecute everyone responsible. And Garrett has agreed to cooperate fully with that process. Dr. Lin added. His testimony is crucial to identifying others involved in the cover-up. The council chair was quiet for a long moment, then nodded. The council will establish a truth commission. All those responsible will be held accountable, including you, Mr. Hale. I understand, Garrett said again. I'm ready. They took him into custody then, but it was gentle. More escort than arrest. As they led him away, Frost called out, We'll visit. And when your daughter comes, we'll tell her what you did here. Garrett stopped. My daughter? She sent a message after watching your testimony. She wants to talk. Frost's golden eyes were warm. Some chains can be broken, Garrett. Maybe this is how you break yours. The next year passed in a blur of testimony and trials. Garrett spent 6 months in detention, cooperating fully with investigators. His testimony helped convict 12 high-ranking military officers and 4 corporate executives. The Truth Commission exposed decades of lies and cover-ups. Throughout it all, the dragons visited regularly. Frost, Storm, and Ridge became fixtures at the hearings, providing evidence and testimony about what had been done to their people. More dragons emerged from hiding, emboldened by the new protections. The population on Frostmark Prime was rescued with 193 survivors. Others were found on 6 different worlds. Garrett's daughter came to see him during the 3rd month. The conversation was hard, painful, full of tears and anger and questions that had no good answers. But she came back. And the next time was a little easier. When he was finally released, having served his sentence and provided everything the commission needed, Garrett returned to Bjornheim. But not to isolation. The cabin had been expanded. Dr. Lin had helped, converting it into a way station for refugees of any species who needed shelter. The 3 dragons returned with him, not as prisoners or pets or anything other than what they were, family, in the strange way that trauma and redemption can forge bonds stronger than blood. Snow was falling the day his daughter arrived, stepping off a transport shuttle with her husband and their 2 children, Garrett's grandchildren who he had never met, who he thought he would never deserve to meet. Frost watched from the barn doorway as Garrett walked out to greet them. The reunion was tentative, careful, but his daughter hugged him, and that was enough. That was everything. "Home is not where you hide from what you've done," Frost said in dragon speech, though she knew the humans couldn't understand her. "It's where you begin making it right." Ridge stood beside her, his massive bulk warm against the cold. Mother would have liked this ending. "It's not an ending," Storm corrected. "More dragons are being found every week. The council is still debating protection laws. Helix is fighting the ruling. There's still so much to do." "Then it's a good thing we have time," Frost said. She watched Garrett introduce his grandchildren to the barn full of supplies and the fields he was turning into shelter for anyone who needed it. Watched him try to explain to a 5-year-old why there were dragons living in his barn. The child's question was simple. "Are they nice?" Garrett looked at Frost, Ridge, and Storm. At the creatures who had every reason to hate him and had chosen something harder than hate. Something closer to understanding. "Their family," he said. The child accepted this immediately, as children do. She walked right up to Frost and asked if she could touch her scales. Frost lowered her head, letting small hands explore the ridge above her eyes. Ridge made a sound that might have been a laugh. "This is strange." "This is right," Frost corrected. "This is what we were fighting for. Not revenge. Not even justice. Just the chance to live without hiding. To be seen for what we are. And what are we?" Storm asked. Frost thought about it. About 50,000 years of civilization. About nests burned and families scattered. About 3 siblings who survived because one old soldier couldn't face his guilt anymore. About the future they had all built together from the ashes of the past. "We're survivors," she said finally. "We're witnesses, and we're the ones who get to decide what comes next." Outside, the wind howled across Bjornheim's frozen landscape, but inside the barn and the cabin and the growing community around them, it was warm. Not perfect. Not without pain or memory of what had been lost, but warm with the possibility of something better. Garrett stood with his daughter and grandchildren, surrounded by dragons and refugees and the beginnings of redemption. He couldn't undo what he had done, couldn't bring back the ones he had killed or erase the years of hiding, but he could be here, could open his door to anyone who needed shelter, could teach his grandchildren that monsters were just people who had forgotten how to be human, and that the way back was possible, even if it cost everything. The smallest grandchild was climbing on Ridge's back now, delighted by the dragon's patient tolerance. Frost was teaching the older one dragon words. Storm was helping unload supplies from the shuttle, using his strength to move containers that would have taken 3 humans. This was not forgiveness. It was something more complicated and more real. It was the hard work of living with what you had done and choosing to do better. It was facing the past instead of hiding from it. It was understanding that redemption wasn't a destination, but a direction. As night fell and the family settled in, Garrett found himself standing at the window looking out at the snow. Frost appeared beside him, her presence comforting in its solidity. "Do you regret it?" she asked quietly. "Helping us. The trial. Prison. Everything you lost." Garrett thought about the metals gathering dust in a box, about the silence of 15 years alone, about the weight of all those deaths he had carried without anyone to share the burden. "No," he said. "For the first time in 15 years, I don't regret anything." Frost nodded, satisfied. Then she returned to where Ridge and Storm were entertaining the children with carefully controlled frost breath, making ice sculptures that glittered in the lamplight. Garrett watched his family, old and new, gathered in the warmth. Watched his daughter laugh at something Ridge said. Watched his grandchildren play without fear of creatures that had been called monsters their whole lives. This was what he had been fighting for without knowing it. Not redemption through grand gesture, but through the daily choice to build something better than what he had destroyed. Not forgiveness from those he had wronged, but the acceptance that he would carry that wrong forever and still choose to do right. The snow fell heavier, covering the world in white, covering old wounds and old sins and the long road that had led them all here. Inside, the fire burned bright. Outside, the future waited, and for the first time since he found 3 dying dragons on his porch, Garrett Hale felt something close to peace.